Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Slurred Words Plays Chess.com with my friend Tyler again. Welcome back.
Hey, glad to be here.
Glad to have you. So this episode, we're gonna be going over some game theory, which I'm actually really excited about. So let's just teach me, bathe me in your anything, in your
Yeah,
knowledge.
do you mind if I share my screen here?
Oh yes, go right ahead.
All right. I'll just kind of give you a general kind of overview of some of my favorite openings.
Okay.
Can you see my screen here?
Yeah.
All right, cool. We'll go ahead and start with the white pieces. So, as you already know, and as we've talked about before, um, generally a good rule of thumb is you want to occupy the center with your openings.
Yeah,
And
yeah. The from what I remember I saw from like the video, D4, E4, D5, E5 are like the central ones, and like all around that box is kind of like they described like those four being like the mountain, and all the blocks around it that surrounded like the perimeter of it is like the hill that you want to
Yeah,
kind of
that's a
control.
good analogy because a
But
lot of chess games do revolve around fighting towards the center.
real quick though,
And
as another side note, I just want to say
mhm,
the white pieces would be a great band name. It just came to me.
White Piece, that would be a good band name.
The white pieces. Anyways,
Pocket that idea.
yeah.
Um, but anyway, so there is another kind of school of thought with openings called hypermodern openings. And now hypermodern openings are some of my favorites because but if you're playing a hypermodern opening, you basically give your opponent the entire center and you set up your pieces in a way to strategically attack the weaknesses at their center.
Oh,
And um, so a little harder to play hypermodern openings. I might dabble a little in it, some near the end of this to show you.
yeah,
But
yeah.
for now, we'll just kind of go for like pretty solid, just sound theory,
Okay.
developing your knights before bishops and, just getting your minor pieces out before you start doing anything and castling early.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, let's go ahead and start. E5, generally my favorite opening with white. I'll occasionally play D5 or D4, E4, not E5.
Yeah.
Um, so we played this in one of our games. So E4, E5, this is pretty standard.
hmm
And so I'll show you the Italian game. It's one of my favorites, and it has a pretty good trap in it too called the fried liver.
Oh, hell yeah, dude, that sounds sweet.
So a lot of people fall for the trap too. Um,
Okay.
so obviously people at like a higher level, will just kind of laugh at that. But even if you don't go for the trap, this is still a pretty solid opening.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
you want to bring out your knight on G1 out to F3 here.
So that way you can tag that pawn.
hmm And then so generally people will defend it by moving their knight here. Some people do like to go to for the Petrov, and we talked a little about the
Yeah,
Petrov.
yeah.
Um, but so in this case for the Italian game, they're going to go here, and then you're going to develop your bishop to C4. And so the Italian game is now on the board. This is the structure for the Italian game. And so there's a few different variations that this could go. Some pretty common ones.
C4 is used a lot for bishop, isn't it?
Huh?
The C4 is used for the bishop a lot. I've been seeing that come up a lot.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
C4 is one of my favorite squares. There is another line that's really popular called the Roy Lopez, which is the setup,
Ooh.
except you go here.
Okay.
But this turned into a really theoretical line because usually this is the Morphe defense where you kick it back, go here, you provoke some weakness in their pawn structure, and I mean there's a lot of different lines in theory that
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
so we won't get bogged down in that.
Okay.
Um, so the Italian game, generally people will, I'd say there's like three or four solid moves in this position, and so with opening theory, once you get to a certain point, like we're at now, uh, on move three, you want to know the general idea of what you're going to do here. So in response to the knight coming out here, this is called the Italian game, the two knights defense. And so with the two knights defense, I'll go ahead and we'll just start off super cheesy and go for this trap here.
Okay.
And so this is the fried liver attack. Um, and so what this involves is noticing that this bishop on c4 is applying pressure to black's f7 pawn.
Yeah, and
And
then that would also be the king in check, and then the king would have to move, probably capture.
and so we're actually not, the aim of this trap won't be putting the king into check. What we're going to actually do is just jump right in. This is already violating an opening principle of trying to not move your pieces twice in an opening until you're fully developed. But this is a pretty fun, aggressive line that you can go for.
Okay, okay.
So once you're here, um, what do you think might be a good response to this? Noticing that there's pressure of two pieces now on that f pawn. Any ideas come to mind
For the black side or the white side?
for the black to move?
You can maybe move the queen with that diagonal one, and but I'm trying to think what else. Here, show me those arrows again. I need to see them again.
Yeah, I'll help
Here
visualize.
and here. Uh, am I getting a call? No, okay. Just want to make sure I heard some like vibration. Uh, and we want to basically stop pressure on that pawn.
Yeah.
Because if they take one, you can move the king. But I guess yeah, you probably want to move the queen, right? To like
So
diagonal one.
yeah, we can look at what happens if you move your queen. So move your queen here, but now if you see that evaluation bar shoot up, the reason that is because so the fried liver attack is all about basically using this knight on c4 to support this move right here. Because now when you move here, your king can't take back because
And he still loses the queen. Yeah.
well, and so your queen will be all right here, but now
Oh, I
well,
see. Keep it there.
yeah, usually the aim. I kind of got this wrong a little because now we can't actually take the rook because you can just move it to the side, but it still opens up your position quite a bit. The general fried liver and a lot of response that people will have is to, they see your knight going up, so they'll immediately be like, oh, like, get out of here and just move here. But now, if you see the evaluation bar shoot up really high,
Oh wow,
that's
yeah.
and this is like the key like line to the fried liver attack is now, what do you do? Because you have a fork between the king, or I mean the queen and the rook with that support from the bishop.
Oh
So
wow, yeah.
no matter what happens, I mean, your best move here for black is obviously to not lose your queen,
And then lose the rook.
but you still lose your rook. And then, I mean,
The
this was
queen,
already
yeah, the queen's kind of a little
pretty
trapped
messy.
in a little bit. Not terribly, but
Yeah. And then even from this position, say white just kind of, plays something random, you can still actually try to like get your knight out of there because you still have this protection.
oh
Um,
wow.
sometimes it's okay just to leave the knight and just say like, ah, screw it, just keep developing your queen side because your queen side is like looking pretty bad, nothing happening here. But you're also ready to castle, and this is going back to the Italian game. So, a thing I like about that is you fully develop your king side to castle early, which
Yeah.
good rule
It,
of thumb.
that makes sense. I mean, like I've seen that two horse defense a lot. That's got that structure I've seen a lot from the
Yeah.
videos I've been playing.
So yeah, let's go back to the two knights defense. So that's kind of the cheesy fried liver. It's good in blitz games. It's good in bullet games. You'll trick people every now and then in a rapid game, but it's definitely not the most like solid to
Yeah.
play. Um, so from here, for the
Well,
two
liver's
knights,
usually pretty like mushy anyways.
yeah, it's sometimes great for you, but not always.
Yeah. In
So
moderation.
yeah, another a defense or kind of response to the two knights defense that I like playing, and I think this might be the computer's favorite move. Um, maybe not. It still looks like about an equal position, but it's just driving this pawn up your d pawn, so d4, just to open up the position a little bit. Because now, if you look, even though we haven't castled yet, it's not a bad idea to start chipping away at the center to try to get it open because, if this happens,
You need to take with.
takes, and then, you see they can't take your knight because, I mean, well, they could trade off knights, but then your
But then
queen would
your queen will
get
get
a
there,
lot.
and it gets developed, and also your bishop now on C1 is open to move around and stuff. Yeah,
And yeah, and so castling here would be, I'd say after maybe takes, it might be even good to just castle here because now your king's safe. You have some pretty solid central control, and then, I mean, Black's best move might be getting their bishop out somewhere just to develop and try to castle before you can really get an attack going.
yeah,
So that's a little bit of theory for the two knights defense for the Italian game.
yeah.
Uh, One of my favorites. You don't see this too often, but just in case you do, it has a really cool tactic. I'll show you a gambit here. So this is called the Guccio Piano game,
Okay,
and so that's when Black basically just copies the bishop move and puts it to c5 there. And so this move looks a little strange, but it's actually really powerful. It's called
like
the Evans Gambit.
mm,
And so once you have this position on the board, pushing up your pawn to b4. And
before
so
what?
you see
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Sorry.
before what? Um, so white, I mean, black has a few different responses to it. They can decline the gambit by just moving it back like that, but that's generally not too good for him because then after that, you can kind of just do some solid developing, maybe supporting that pawn or even castling.
hmm
There's a lot of different options, and then you have some pretty great central control and over on the queen side too. So it might be good to start like a pawn storm.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah.
but so anyway, usually they'll take with the bishop or knight. Knight is probably the worst of the two because if you see here, um, no matter what they do, pretty much, you almost always want to play c3 in the Evans Gambit after they take this pawn.
Yeah,
And you kind of see why here. So, say they take with the knight, push that up, and then, I mean, they're pretty much forced to go back to where they came. And then what we see here now is a pretty awesome sequence.
like your queen's
So,
open.
mhm. and so we push this to the middle, and then
Oh, okay.
oftentimes they're going to take. And so if you take here, the kind of knee jerk general reaction would be to take this pawn back on d4, but you'll actually let it slide and you'll just go ahead and castle. And so here's a pretty awesome line here. They think like, oh, well, hey, that was a free pawn. I'll just go ahead and take this, and then, whatever. They can take back uh, that pawn with their knight. So here's what happens though. After you castle, and they'll most likely take, you have a pretty awesome sacrifice that, I mean, it's not actually a sacrifice because you get material back, but check this out. So you'll actually move bishop to f7, and now, I mean, they don't really have a choice. Like, they can just move away, but like, yeah, pretty much like it's probably the best move to just take it. And so once they take the bishop, though, do you see any tactic here that might win a piece back for you? Thinking about using a check as a mechanism.
Using check as mechanism. Um, I imagine maybe what you do is like the only thing I can see I can do is just move the queen to like up to d7, but then the other queen's gonna take the other queen, right?
So not, I do like what you're saying about moving the queen, but it won't be d7. You'll actually be moving up to d5 here.
Oh yeah, duh. There's another
Yeah.
way you could get the check with that. Okay.
And so now, they're gonna move that again, and then you win your bishop back, and then you're able to take your pawn. You have an awesome open central lane for your pieces now, and you're castled. They're not. And so this leads to a lot of really interesting positions where white has a lot of great attacking chances. And it really just like blows open their position, keeps you really safe. And so yeah, even though you give up a pawn in that beginning with moving that to b4,
Yeah.
um, it really pays off.
I'm gonna have to I'm gonna look review that one because that one seems very
Yeah,
interesting.
and
But I
I
think I
mean,
got how it works. Like I get how the gambit works. I'm just got to remember like the
yeah, and with a
nuances
lot of openings, you'll just have to kind of solidify the theory by like reading up on it, watching videos, just kind of
and practicing in general.
yeah, and yeah, definitely just trying out and seeing what works and what doesn't in real games. Um, so that's pretty much uh, some common lines you'll see in the Italian game.
Yeah.
And so that's a nice opening for white. I like to play just to get that early castle on the king side. And then after you castle, then you might want to start focusing on some queen side development. Um, but yeah, so those are two lines. We could go back. I'll show you the Queen's Gambit and not the
I've
Netflix
heard.
show.
I know. I've heard about this though. I heard this one about about the
Yeah.
Queen's Gambit a lot.
So the Queen's Gambit starts off with d4, d5, and then you immediately offer this on the queen side. And the kind of general reason being is, and it's not necessarily bad for black to accept or decline. They both have their benefits. But say you do take this, then white's kind of main idea is to gambit, give up that pawn here on the side for um, really solid central control with these two pawns, because now you're
Yeah.
covering, you know,
You control the mountain, and
yeah.
there one pawn that could help with the mountain's already gone. It's like it's diverted.
And so then you'll see some kind of general, um, just developmental moves. And so you want to pay attention to attackers versus defenders. But then eventually in this position, you'll reach a point where you can usually use this bishop to take back that pawn on c4 again. Um, and
Okay. Yeah.
then it kind of
And
leads to
you
a
have like a piece
slight
of
edge with
advantage.
white.
Yeah. No, that makes
And
sense.
then you're able to castle again with that kingside development.
And you
That's
start
just
out
like a
with like
really
D4 is what you do. Okay.
mhm.
And then you go
and
to C4 afterwards.
and so that's the Queen's Gambit accepted. And I mean, there's a bunch of variations. That was just kind of like general idea for it. Um, so this is called Queen's Gambit declined when they just strengthen this pawn chain instead of attacking that.
Yeah.
And so from this point, you can kind of just follow again general developing principles. Um, you know, and again, white will usually have a slight edge here just because they have a little bit more of that center. You just want to make sure that you protect those central pawns with your development.
Mm. Yeah, it's good to know with Queen's Gambit. The Queen's Gambit seems to be like the easiest one to like, get my head around, just because it's so
Yeah,
short, I
no,
guess.
yeah,
Like the other ones, I understand them too. Like especially that last one, I try to like memorize it. I think I kind of get the idea of it, like
mhm,
what to move in and where. But that
yeah,
Queen's Gambit seems like a
and
very easy one.
yeah, Queen's Gambit is definitely a great beginner opening to learn. And this is one of the first openings I learned just because it is a pretty straightforward position
Yeah.
where all your moves feel natural and, usually to really solid positions.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and flip the board and talk some openings for black. Um, so he, here we start with e4 for white. So I'll show you a response to e4 and a response to d4. And for the d4 response, I'll show you a hyper modern opening, just to kind of change things up. And um,
Ooh. Okay.
but for this, we'll talk about a Sicilian.
Mm.
And so Sicilians definitely one of the most very theoretical lines. There's a lot of different
Very
various
versatile.
stuff.
Very versatile. Yeah.
Um, but white has a lot of different options, and I mean you have a lot of different options too in response to this. You definitely have to be pretty cognizant of what white is doing and having appropriate responses to that. But what I'm going to show you here, it's called the Accelerated Dragon. It's one of my favorite openings.
It's such a cool name too.
Yeah. Um, so you'll generally get, one of these two knight moves out during the Sicilian. You'll almost want to always put your knight out on c6 here.
Okay.
And then white has a couple things it could do. There's a thing called, the open Sicilian. And when they do that, it's not a bad idea just to take, because usually they'll take back. And so the kind of idea for the Sicilian Accelerated Dragon is to get this pawn push up on your king side. And so once you push that pawn up, and another common move is just to develop that knight out there. And so this bishop right here, we're fianchettoing on.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's kind of like, that's your dragon basically.
I
That'll
see. I see.
do off. And it has, I mean, this bishop here wins you so many games just because it's such a powerful piece that can really peer over the whole board. Um, and so a general idea now, you can see that white does still have a grab of more of the center. You'll want to really focus on trying to get a pawn break on this d5 square. And so a good rule of thumb for pawns are, the best way to protect a pawn is with another pawn.
Yeah, that's what I've
So
seen.
so to prepare this push, let's just say white makes a random move like that. Um, let's see. Oh, well, that actually looks like a blunder or something. But say they make a random move, um, then you'll want to move that here to prep for that kind of pawn break.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
But and usually before the pawn break, I'd even recommend, maybe moving your knight up here, just because.
It's more
Um,
power to attack with. The only
um,
thing is, I would be worried that if you did that, couldn't they just move the pawn because the pawn's under attack?
yeah, and so that's one thing you want to be careful about, is that pawn push here. But then you can usually evacuate your knight over to this square. And I see now why the computer, like when I just make random moves, how the evaluation bar shoots up here. That's because once you get this fianchetto, you really got to move this knight out of the way, because if you don't, say you just make a random move again, you can actually take that knight.
And have
Because
support for the bishop.
yeah,
Oh, okay, I see. I see. Okay.
yeah. So monster bishop, just because a lot of people kind of don't calculate that into what they're doing. It's because it's on like the edge of the board.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's a little bit of the accelerated dragon. Again, there's a lot of different variations, but yeah, I'd say that's usually a good rule of thumb, is to develop um, your king side. Once you get this bishop being pedoed, plans a castle, and then plan a pawn break on d5 after the castle.
Gotcha. Hey, real quick, so let's see what time we're at.
Yeah,
We're at 23 minutes. We can go a little bit longer. We can go up to like 30. I'm thinking like that's usually how long I
yeah.
make these episodes.
I'll just go over one more
Okay.
kind of idea of an opening, and this is my favorite opening personally. It's a little tricky to play, because you do sometimes break key principles, and I've definitely messed it up a lot, by not following, or I mean, by not realizing when it's good to break some key principles. Um, but I mean, the entire idea of this opening, and this is the response to D4. Uh, and so this is called the King's Indian Defense.
Oh,
And
I've heard about this
this
one.
is a
Yeah.
hyper modern opening.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And so your general idea is going to be moving uh, your knight here for your first move with response to d4. And so seeing that, a lot of people will just grab the middle. Um, and I mean, you can take this, but then that leads into a pretty just like wacky response. That's, I mean, generally they'll
What's that called again with
actually
the
not.
when the bishop controls the whole line? I'm trying to get that down in my head because I want to reference
Oh,
your
yeah,
videos.
it's called a fianchetto.
Fiend Kettle, that's right. You know, I should just like write that down.
Yeah,
That would be a good idea. I don't know how you spell it, but I'll, I can read my own.
it is spelled really weird. Yeah.
Yeah, I can, I can figure it out from my own writings.
Um, so yeah, usually after you play this knight move and the King's Indian, a lot of people will go, either move one of their knights, probably this knight even, just so they could support this second pawn push. And so almost all of your moves will be pretty much the same in the King's Indian, these first few.
Okay.
You're going to prepare the fianchetto by pushing g6 and then moving that bishop here. But now, before we actually do that, if they push their second pawn in the center, it's a good idea to push this d pawn up just one, which this transposes into another line called the perk, which is a little trickier. But yeah, if they do push this pawn, you'll usually want to protect your knight with this pawn here, just so they can't kind of exploit that, make the move.
Gotcha. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
they couldn't take, but yeah, so it's usually a good idea just to kind of get that out there. Um, but if they don't do that, say they just get their second night or something, then you'll want to, push
Get some
your,
support on with your bishop.
mm-hmm. And then
Your,
so
your,
this
your
leaves your
bishop's kind
bishop.
of like an enabler. I'm kind of realizing it allows you to like, it basically protects your other pieces along
Yeah,
that line. Too. That makes sense. Okay.
and this bishop, it does have a lot of potential energy. So even though it's blocked by the knight right now, once you move that knight out of the way, it cause a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just
You go for that pawn with the bishop, and then you go for the other pawn on f2, and then like, oh, I guess it could get the king. Never mind, never mind. Ignore me.
um, but yeah, so same general idea. It's going to be king side heavy development, so you can castle early. And now when you castle early, you'll usually just say another kind of random move. Um, you'll A good idea is to generally push up this d pawn, and then notice that it supports your e and your c squares. And so now in this kind of position, you want to start thinking about a pawn break, either with the c or e pawn based on what your opponent's position is. And with that, we're castled. We're trying to tear open the center so we can have more lines for attack, and then hopefully, you know, we can do that before they're able to complete their development in castle.
Okay.
And so that's a general idea of the King's Indian. You want to be careful sometimes noticing this where, say they play another random move and then you move here. Now you got to notice the pin on your queen, because if you, just another random move, say, you want to move your knight
Knight there.
somewhere.
Your bishop's gonna take the queen. Yeah.
So that's something important to pay attention to, is making sure not to drop your queen by, you know, just
Yeah.
them exploiting the pin. So yeah, I mean, these openings have been, pretty basic overviews, and there's a lot more theory and a lot more lines that kind of go into it. But that's some general, just kind of overviews of my favorite, like e4, e5, or I mean e4, d4 openings for black and white.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's really cool. That's good. Thank you for again for the help on this episode. Of course, you'll be seeing some more of TL 1864 next episode as well when we do some actual games here.
Oh yeah.
Um, so, do you have anything else you want to say real quick before we end the episode?
No, no, yeah, this
Perfect.
was fun. I could talk chess for hours, dude.
Well, I think we'll definitely do this some more. Like, I want to get some like experience in, but maybe like every couple of weeks or something, we can regroup and you can be my He'd be my coach for a while.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
That'd be great. Anyway, so thanks for watching, everyone. If you like what you saw, come like, subscribe. Also, if you want to challenge Ty, if you think you can beat him, he's a busy college student, very smart guy. But I'm sure TL1864 would love some matches.
Yes, I would.
And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace out.